Welcome, welcome. This is Cloud Conversations with Rue and Pete, and we are on episode 10. It's great to be with you again today. However you're watching on YouTube or on Anchor Podcasts or however you consume this. My name's Peter, or Pete Rising. I'm a Microsoft MVP based in the northeast of England, and as ever, I'm joined by my good friend Rue Campbell. Hey, Rue, how are you today?
I am all good, Pete, all good here, and it's really my honour to introduce our guest this show, Andy Malone, MVP. Believe in MVP for 14 years running now. He is a Microsoft certified trainer, author, both technical and fiction, which I'd love to talk to you about at some point. So, Andy, thanks for joining us.
No, your absolute pleasure. Nice to see you all.
Great stuff, good stuff. And could you just, introduce yourself to our viewers? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up where you are.
Andy Malone. I'm an MVP, like these two esteemed gentlemen.
Easy, not yet.
I live just outside Stirling, in Scotland, in Bonnie, Scotland. I'm a Microsoft trainer for 23 years, actually, a long time. So I think we've all been around the block a little bit, and I thought, this is a fantastic community. And it's great to see you guys doing something wonderful as well. So it's fantastic to be on your show. So, hey.
Awesome. Great. Really nice to have you here. And I guess, if I'm thinking about it, you mentioned you've been training in Microsoft for 23 years. And just before we started the show, we were talking about, the first exam you sat and everything like that. How have you seen things change? Because 23 years is quite, we've really changed a hell of a lot since then.
Oh, totally. I mean, the exams, haven't really changed that much. The format of the exams have changed a little bit. So we now have things like case studies and drag and drop questions, hotspot questions, and things like that. I've been involved in writing a few exams over the years, and they're always fun to do. The topics, of course, have changed dramatically as well. So we all went through the personal computer era, then we went through the client server era, and now we're in the cloud era. And we're soon to be in the AI and the who knows where we're going to be era in the future. But it's been I think we've all said, had a fantastic career. And it's been a wonderful career, and I've met wonderful people. So, yeah.
Great stuff. You'll be looking forward to when restrictions start easing off, I guess, and you can start traveling and holding classes in person, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I do a lot of training in the Nordics. In fact, the Nordics is my number one place to train. So I'm in Denmark and Norway and Sweden and Iceland and places like that.
Cool.
I very rarely train, strangely enough, I very rarely train in the UK these days. But I was just actually speaking to my wife this morning, and it's been 8 months since I stepped in a classroom. That's crazy. Or it will be 8 months, rather. It will be 8 months by the time I kick off again in August. But I've just had confirmations that the courses will run in person from August. So, it's going to be great to be back in a classroom. But I think nobody anticipated the massive uptake of online learning. Everybody thought companies are going to put off the learning and we're going to be very quiet, but it's been the opposite. We've been crazy busy this year. In fact, this has been 2020 was our busiest year ever in terms of business. Yeah, and it was just amazing.
So. Right. That's quite interesting because that surprised me because personally speaking, I learn better in person. So why do you think that there's been a kind of sudden surge in learning remotely then?
I think, I always remember years ago, when we always said in-classroom training was the best. And a lot of companies wanted to do things on the cheap and the computer learning. Well, computer learning in those days was having one of those things called a CD-ROM that you stick in a machine, and you remember those things, and you just go through the training yourself. But there was no interactivity with it. It was just like reading a book. But this is truly interactive. So tomorrow, I'm teaching a class of 15 people, and I can see them all. I can interact with them. We can ask each other questions, and they can show me their screens if they're having problems. So I think it's the next best thing to kind of in-person training, and it's just exploded over this year, you know. So that's definitely one of the pluses of coronavirus.
Awesome. Good stuff. And I guess, if I think more about your kind of training career, am I correct that you run your own training company? Is that right?
Yes, I did. I originally started in Scotland, actually, in Edinburgh. When I graduated from uni, I worked for a company called CTEC, Computer Training Education Centres. So I worked for them, and I remember my very, very first teach was Microsoft Excel 2.0. I remember teaching that, and then from that, I then progressed to become a technical trainer, and I was one of the initial or early MCSE technical trainers, you know. But yeah, I mean, I started there, and we then formed our own company. Well, I left CTEC and I got a job, and I always remember it was Christmas 1999. And the company I worked for, the guy came to me on Christmas Eve and he says, "Andy, I'm closing the company on Christmas Eve." And I thought, I'm never going to go through that again. I'm going to form my own company. And I did. And then we never looked back. We never looked back. You're always afraid of, will I work for somebody else, or will I take that risk? And we took the risk, and here we are 22 years or 20, almost 20 years later. Yeah. So it was good.
That's awesome. I mean, we've spoken to another guest on the show recently who's an independent consultant, and it's something that Peter and I discussed insofar as it feels like a risk taking that step. But I guess for you, it's a risk either way, because you're at the mercy of an employer fundamentally.
Everybody says that to me. What I did is I decided I took a contract, so that my first job, I remember it was with ScotRail. And I took a contract, and I thought, what happens when this contract ends? So I got something like 10,000 leaflets printed about my own company. And I paced the streets of Glasgow and Edinburgh and Aberdeen and Dundee and knocking on doors. And so by the time this contract had finished, a lot of my own work had taken over. And from then on, we never looked back, and we kind of focused on in-person training, on-site training. So I hired trainers, and it was fun. It was good. Those were good early days.
Awesome. I like the hustle of walking around the streets of Glasgow handing out flyers.
Yeah.
I'm just absolutely loving this so far, and I'm just remembering that I'm actually the co-host of this show, but I'm just loving this conversation. I'm just listening like a viewer and taking this all in. This is brilliant stuff. So, but yeah, I have, as Rue was alluding to, I don't know if I could ever make that leap to work for myself. I have a philosophy in life of never say never, but who knows what's around the corner? But it seems like a bit of a leap for me to make that step, I must admit. But everybody is different, so
absolutely. I mean, some people, I've been offered many jobs through the years, but when you just look at the flexibility, we're doing house upgrades and things here, and I'm saying, I'm sorry, I can't work for you this week, or I can't do that next week. I actually, I'll be honest, I've only got 6 customers in the world. I only have 6 customers.
Yeah.
But they're pretty big customers. So, they keep me pretty busy.
And that's the way to do it, isn't it? To get customers who are sticky to you and will always come back, and that loyalty. And
to be honest, we're not just customers, they're friends. Friends. And I think if you give a great job and you're basically part of their company, and they make me feel part of the company, which is always wonderful, So I think that's always treat your good customers well,
Oh, spot on. And the way you're working at the moment, delivering the training remotely, as we have been in COVID times, how are you doing that at the moment? What tools are you using? Is it Teams or a different platform? What is it you're using to do that?
You know, I think I think this year or last year, I think I've taught every single platform going. So I think, what did we start on? We started GoToMeeting. Remember that? You know that one?
Yeah.
We
Oh,
did
the Citrix one, isn't it?
GoToMeeting.
Yeah.
We did that, and then we worked on Zoom. I love Zoom, by the way.
Boo.
You Microsoft EU, and of course Teams as well. But Teams is very different to Zoom. It's a different product. You know, you can't really compare Teams to any of the other products. It's a very different platform. So, you know, people always say to me, Andy, why do you use a Mac? Because I use all Apple devices. I don't use Microsoft devices or PCs or whatever. And the reason being is it's not about the device. It's about how I can consume my information. And I think that when Satya Nadella took over Microsoft, that was one of his mission goals. You know, you didn't have to use Internet Explorer. You didn't have to use a PC. You don't have to use Windows. You know, there are other platforms out there. And let's face it, I mean, I'm using Microsoft Word. I'm using Microsoft Outlook. I'm using Azure and 365. But I'm just consuming it on a different platform.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Pete, I think you're a Mac OS guy, aren't you? You do most of your work on a Mac.
Yeah, I've been working on a Mac as my primary device since about 2014, and I've never gone back. I mean, I do have Windows devices as well, which I need to use in certain situations, but my Mac is my device of choice. I'm on that right now, and I absolutely love it, and I totally agree with you. It's easy to use Microsoft Office 365 on it. It works just works. Really nice. Yeah, it just works.
It works. I love it. I love the fact that it just works.
Yeah, in the words of the late great Steve Jobs.
Hacks or extra drivers or anything like that you need to do. You know, it just works, and that's what I appreciate.
I feel like I need to step in here and defend Windows, but I'm not going to.
Because oh my God, I love Windows. You know, I love Windows. I run Windows in a virtual machines. And of course, all of that, of course. And you know, actually, when I first moved to a Mac, somebody says to me, why did you move to a Mac? And I was looking for a thin, light laptop at the time. And I remember I was traveling around. I had a Dell, what was it? It was a Dell Latitude. And this thing was like a nuclear reactor on my back. And I fly a lot on planes. And this thing was just like, it was bigger than 2 tables, you know? And you know, guys were talking about, oh, how, you know, have you got 32 or 64 gig of RAM? Nobody needs that RAM in a machine anymore, you know? So I went into a store. I says, what's the best laptop that you've got? And the guy said, get a MacBook. He says, you can try it for a week. If you don't like it, bring it back. I've never looked back.
Absolutely.
Fair enough. The one thing that I do have to give credit, and just to be clear, I do use a MacBook as my personal device. And I think that when you look at really the form factor that Apple introduced with things like the MacBook Air, that was such a kick up the rear end for a lot of the other established Windows developers. And I think now the Surface devices, they're really cool.
I was going to say, actually, you know, Microsoft in the last few years with its devices division they have been very innovative. They have got some very cool hardware, and they're doing really well. And good luck to them. You know, absolutely good luck to them.
Yeah, I remember when the Surface devices first came out. At the time, Steve Ballmer was still in charge of Microsoft. And I think the rationale for introducing them at the time was that Microsoft were frustrated with the type of devices that the traditional vendors were still putting out there. And they wanted to say, well, no, this is what you should be doing. And still, I think if you look at some of the big names of vendors who put out Windows 10 devices to this day, I still don't think they look half as good as the Surfaces. So they're not really, for me, catching up.
Agree. Yeah, totally agree. Agree.
Agreed. Yeah. I guess kind of switching back and thinking more about your training. I'm aware that you, for starters, you run a YouTube channel. But before I get into talking to you about YouTube, my wife, she works as a lecturer, and she's got her fair share of ridiculous, funny, crazy stories about students that maybe aren't the best students. If you've been teaching for over 23 years, you must have some cracking incidents of students that are memorable. Is that the right term?
I've had peaches. Oh, I've seen everything. I've seen this, that you've seen that, I've seen this. Hello, all that kind of stuff. What have I seen? I remember I once taught a SharePoint class, a SharePoint server class, and the classroom, they were all facing me, right? So I couldn't see their screens, right? And I said, is everybody okay? And this was like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Is everybody okay? Everybody fine? Everybody getting on okay? Yes, everything's fine. No problems at all. And 2 o'clock in the afternoon, this guy stands up and he goes, "Chow," and he starts saying lots of bad words, which I won't repeat here. And he starts jumping up, very upset, very irate. And I said, "What's wrong? Are you okay?" He says, "This is not working." I says, "Well, let me see." So I went round. He hadn't even switched on.
And this was halfway through the course?
This was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He'd been so... he couldn't even find the power switch to switch it on.
Oh, good grief.
So what had he been doing all day?
I have no idea. He said to me, "I want my money back." And I said, "I don't think so. I'm sorry." If you hire a car and you decide not to drive it, it's not my fault,
Yeah. That's the guy that just wanted a day out of the office. That's what that was.
My other favorite one was at the beginning of every course, every instructor, you do this on a course. I think it was Windows Server 2000 I was teaching long time ago. And at the beginning of the course, we introduce ourselves, and then we get the students to introduce themselves, and, we go through the class. My name's John. I work for Dell or Peter or whatever. And then we get to this lady, and this lady, I says, "What's your name?" She says, "Mary." And I says, "Okay, Mary, what do you do?" She says, "I work for IBM or something like that." I says, "Fair enough." I says, "What kind of computer did you work with?" She says, "I don't know." I went, You don't know?" She says, "No." I says, "Well, what kind of box, what kind of server is it?" And she said, "It's a big blue one."
She does work for IBM. There you
go. And I was in 2 years ago, I was in Kuwait teaching a course, as you do. And I was teaching a CISSP, which is a Certified Security Professional course. And we do a pre-course test. And generally, the average passing score is 22. And everybody got 22, 24, 25 in the class, except one lady, and she got 6. And I thought, "Oh no, this is going to be one of those. This is going to be a nightmare." And at the end of the course, we did a post-course test. She got 98.
What?
Out of 100.
Wow. So how did she? How did she do the? How did she improve so much?
She just learned and listened.
Wow.
I got to take my hat off to her. That was amazing.
Yeah.
So never prejudge somebody.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
completely. But Rue gets some pretty high scores on Microsoft exams. He's consistently been in the 900s, which is
very good.
Mighty impressive.
Not in my last few. There was a few that were kind of shoe-ins because it's stuff I was working with every day. But I recently took the SC code exams, and I did the SC 200. And I thought I would do okay with that because I work with Microsoft Defender all the time. But there was so much to do with Sentinel and more specifically KQL, which I don't work with so much, at least not on a regular basis. And I came out of that thinking, "Oh, there's no way I've done that." But scraped to pass, so happy with that. But You don't
I mean,
always
that's
know
the
what you're
thing
going
about,
into.
guys always say to me, Andy, how do I pass this exam? Do I need to get 900? Do I need to get this? You need to pass.
Exactly. A
That's
pass
it.
is a pass.
700 doesn't make any difference. You passed, mate. That's it. Well done.
I've had exactly 700 one time.
Yeah, so have I. I've had
Yeah.
700. Of course, everybody has, and anybody who says they haven't is telling you lies.
Yeah,
of course.
exactly. A colleague of ours not too long ago really felt for him. He got 699, which is harsh.
Oh,
that shouldn't be
painful.
allowed.
No, really
that
shouldn't.
is painful.
But,
I don't think that is allowed, is it?
But then he actually smashed it the next time. It's luck of the questions on the day, isn't it? And
I always say that, if some, I'll say that to the class. I'll say if you're getting 650, 680, 690, and you fail, go back in the next day and do the exam.
Yeah.
But if you're getting 400s, 500s, you've not done enough work.
Yeah, 650 upwards, you're there or thereabouts. And we were talking a bit earlier about the first 365 exams that were about a few years ago, the old MCSA, the 70346 and 347, and they were the first exams that I did in the modern era, shall we say.
Yeah.
And I got through the 346 no problem. I got a really decent score. I got late 800s or something, and then I took the 347.
That's a tough exam. That's a tough exam. Actually, that was a toughie.
The 347.
Yeah.
Well, I failed that the first time. I got what did I get? I got something like 653, and I was devastated, really devastated. But I thought, no, I'm going to go. And I remember I got a bunch of questions on Office 365 telemetry on that one, which who uses that? I've never I've never come across anybody who uses it, but I got a ton of questions on that.
I know.
Then I revised solidly for telemetry for the resit, and a couple of weeks later I went back and took it again, and I think I got one question on telemetry on that one, and got through with a sort of mid 700 score. So it's going to vary on the day, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, actually, there is a secret to taking an exam. If you want to take it, I'll tell you some secrets to taking an exam.
Just between us three.
Take them early. Yeah. Always take an exam early, because the pool of questions is very small. Yes. Whereas if you take like the SC exams at the moment, the pool of questions is small, right? But as they grow, it will get more and more in depth. Yeah. On the subject of exams, do remember as well that the exams only last a year now as well. That was quite controversial. Yeah,
that's a big change.
And people think, oh, that's awful. But actually, I just went through my updates for my certified administrator expert. Yeah, MCE. And I did the update things for it. And I thought, I'll just wing it. I won't even look at it. So I just went right through. And it was, and it said, okay, you failed. I went, what? And it was all new stuff. It was stuff that I'd never seen or never heard of. But then when you actually go through it, it takes you like 20 minutes to go through it, and then you pass, of course. Yeah. And that's the point. The point is they're forcing you. Well, not forcing you, that's a strong word, but they're making suggestively that you learn these new features.
Yeah, encouraging you to stay fresh and up to date. And I've got about 4 of those to do myself for my enterprise administrator expert. There's a few and I've been putting them off because I've just not had time. But
you won't have a problem with it.
But yeah, I mean, what I'll probably do is what I do find good for taking any exams in the first place with Microsoft is that the learning paths now on MS Docs are actually pretty good. That's pretty much all I've ever used to get through the
to be
Microsoft
honest,
exams
that's how we write that's where the questions come from. A lot of the questions, when we write the questions, that's where they come from.
One piece of advice I heard, and this was from a Microsoft certified trainer who will remain anonymous until I've confirmed that I'm allowed to say this. But my understanding is that when the writing process happens for an exam, there has to be the whoever's writing that question has to be able to reference back to what at the time would have been a TechNet article or a Docs article. There has to be some reference back to official Microsoft documentation. Yeah. Is that correct? Insofar as if you, it's all there basically. You just have to learn it and remember it.
And if there are changes, if there is a change to that article, or if something, let's say, we're live in the cloud, the menus change on a weekly basis. If something changed, that question is dropped immediately. Yeah.
Interesting. That's really good. Yeah. And so, I guess it must be quite a dynamic system then, insofar as the folks at Microsoft must be able to update the pool of questions quite easily.
Yeah, the exams are updated all the time. There's like monthly meetings,
right,
which talk about the exams, and then you get together in a room in Toronto or in Vancouver or wherever, and you just cram, and you go for a week, and then at the end of the week you come out with an exam, and then it goes into beta. You can try your luck at beta exams, and then that's where we gather a lot of feedback on the questions, if there was any issues with the questions that you had, and if not, then the question goes live, and that was it.
Awesome. That's really good. That's good insight into how the kind of process works, because some folk think it is quite a mystified process, but it's nice to hear that how it comes together.
Yeah. There's a lot of psychology in it as well. There's a lot of psychology built into it, into the questions as well.
Yep. If in doubt, choose option E. That's my choice. Always just stick with
E. Go middle.
Yes.
Look at what I said. You got 1 in 5 chance to get the right question.
Well, here's a good question. This is obviously personal and it's entirely subjective. Let's say there's a question which could go either way. You're not really sure. Maybe it's a bit of a stab in the dark. Do you ever go back and change your answer after you've committed to something? Because I'm a gut feel kind of person.
I would trust. Yeah. So people always ask me this question as an instructor. I would say go with your gut feeling, right? Read the question thoroughly. Yes.
Oh yes.
Read the question thoroughly. Look at the answers. Eliminate the obviously wrong answers. Read the question again, and then select the best answer. Right. And remember processes things flow in the right way. Especially with drag and drop questions. Often they're put in the wrong order. Some of the easiest questions are actually PowerShell. And a lot of people say, "Oh, I hate PowerShell," or "I love PowerShell," or whatever. But a lot of people hate PowerShell. How am I ever going to get it? Read the question. PowerShell is logical, and the answer is right there. In many cases.
Yeah, just look at the name of the commandlet, and it kind of tells you what it's going to do.
Exactly.
I do think we should have lifelines in exams, though. We should have like kind of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire style lifelines.
Yeah.
50-50. Yep, absolutely. Cool. I guess, shifting gears a bit and talking again more just about the training process, because you currently run a YouTube channel, which you put out a lot of content on. I don't want to say it's every week, but it seems to be consistently you're putting out training videos on really anything to do with.
Normally it is every week, but I've been thrown out of my room, so I can't do one this week. But actually, I'm training for the next 3 weeks in here, so maybe I will do another couple, but I try and do one every week. Yes. And this was just because of lockdown, actually. And I started with something like 20 subscribers, and just in a year, it's just over a year actually. And I've now got 2,500 something.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it's really picking up, and I'm getting great feedback as well. And people ask such great questions, and I want it to be a community, and no question is stupid, in my opinion. And if I can, one of the great things about a trainer is, if I can help somebody, if that light bulb goes on for somebody, I've done my job, and I love that part of my job. And also it's a great way for me to contribute to my MVP award as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer. So there's absolutely right. There's no such thing as a stupid question. And that's the only way you're going to learn, by asking that question. And so many people are afraid to pipe up, aren't they?
That's right. So and that's the great thing about the IT community. It's okay if you don't know the answer. because
Completely.
somebody does, and it's a wonderful community. We all help each other, you know.
It really is.
You
It
know.
really is. And you mentioned your MVP there, and
Mm.
I'm in my first year as an MVP, so I'm a baby MVP.
Hey,
So thank you.
awesome.
So I was awarded last October for the
That's
very first time,
awesome.
which I'm thrilled about. But it's a nice little sort of bow on just the community journey.
Yeah,
At the end of the day,
yeah,
I do it for the love of it because I love being part of that community, as you say. But
yeah.
you've been doing this for 14 years. Can you sort of share a little bit about when you originally were awarded and how's the program sort of
I
changed
knew you were going to ask that.
and grown in this time?
I've got a confession to make.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I'm going to give you a confession that I've never told anyone. Okay,
Oh, an exclusive.
Exclusive.
an exclusive. Okay, back in the day, I got invited. There was a lady at Microsoft. Her name was Eileen Brown, and it was part of the influencer team at TVP. And they said, Andy, there's this. You're a bit of an influencer. I wasn't an MVP at the time. They said you're a bit of an influencer because I was doing a lot of speaking and stage work and stuff for guys. They said we're running an event in Las Vegas. Would you like to go? I went, absolutely. And it was CES, and it was when Microsoft were just about to release Windows. Was it Windows Vista? It was Windows Vista, and they paid for me to go out to Las Vegas to CES. They put us in a hotel, the works, and all the product guys came in. They were handing out, laptops. They were handing out books, big book. Oh, it was fantastic. The gifts we got, it was like great stuff, you know. We got to meet Bill Gates. Met Bill Gates. I've met him twice actually. Very nice guy. We had great conversations together. Yeah, and it was like great. And then the next year, after that, they said to me, "All right, we've got this thing called MVP. Would you like to be up for it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." She said, "What would you like to be an MVP in?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know." She says, "How about deployment?" I went, "Yeah, I'll take it."
Oh, fantastic.
That was what in deployment. And I went out to Redmond, and I'll never admit this to anyone, but I was sat there in this room with all these guys. I hadn't a clue what they were talking about.
Not a deployment expert then.
It was like over the top of my head. And then the year after, I said, we better change this to security because that is something that I do know. And I've been security MVP ever since.
Oh,
I do know security.
I love that because the way it works now when you get nominated, of course, is that they decide based on your contributions where they're going to put you, which category, which makes sense, doesn't it? So
yeah, of course. Yeah, and it's all about contribution. It's about it's about what you can give to the community as well. What can you share? It's about sharing your knowledge, and ultimately, it's about influencing. We're influencers at the end of the day. But being unbiased, I think that's an important thing. We're not biased. Yeah, and Microsoft one of the things that Microsoft really like is you tell them as it is. They like that. If you think it sucks, tell them it sucks. It's okay, because sometimes they like a fresh pair of eyes on something, which is
I've heard that a lot as well. That they want that honest feedback because ultimately they want to be able to improve their products. They want people to be able to use them easily and like them rather than be saying, "Oh, Teams doesn't do this," and we want to be getting to a point where people are saying, "Oh, isn't Teams wonderful? All the stuff it does," rather than, "Oh, it doesn't do this very well." So where are you going to get that feedback if your influencers are afraid to pipe up and say, "Well, actually, I think this would work so much better if it just did this little tweak," and it's quite often just a little thing, isn't it? So
yeah,
absolutely. But
I mean, a lot of the products have tit for tat things going on, like Teams versus Zoom, this feature versus that feature. But you're right. I mean, there are some products though that you can't compare, and they love, I love it when they come to me and they say, how can we improve this product? And the way the process works at Microsoft, they basically brainstorm everything. You go into a room in Redmond and they brainstorm of it. Everything's like, this is the must-haves, this is the would likes, and this is the, oh yeah, these are the things that we would really like in the future. And they take those bits out, and that's how they develop their products,
Yeah.
But yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, as an MVP as well, and a trainer, you're obviously very, very comfortable with speaking and being in front of an audience. And you've spoken at a large amount of conferences in your time. Has nerves ever something you've struggled with in that regard? And are you looking? I think you've already alluded to this a little bit. Are you looking forward to getting back to in-person events? I think the answer is probably yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember. It's funny sometimes. My last conference was actually Microsoft Ignite. You remember they did the roadshow just at the beginning of 2020. Yeah, the tour. Well, I did Dubai and I did London, and I thought they were just sending me onto a small stage in London, and they sent me to this enormous stage, and the room was mega packed, and there must have been like at least 3,000 people in this room.
Yeah,
and it was great. And initially when you go, oh, right. But yes, you do get nervous. Of course you do. But if you know your stuff, and you're prepared, you stand on stage and you can't see them anyway. All you see is bright light, to be honest. And when you stand on stage, my greatest advice to be somebody who wants to be a speaker is treat the audience like you're speaking to one person.
Love
just
it.
see them as one person, and then treat them, and you go on a speaking skills course, like you look over here, you look over here, and then you look over here, so that everybody feels like they're being part of it.
Yeah, like you're looking at them. But fantastic. Well, that Excel event, the Ignite the Tour ones, I went to 2 of those. I've never been to the big Ignite in the States, but I went to the last 2 UK ones at Excel London and thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm told the Big Daddy Excel, not Excel, Ignite is way on a different scale. But
30,000 people. It's just unbelievable. Is it good? Is it? I don't know. It used to be. I love it. We used to have a thing called Microsoft Tech Ed. I loved Tech Ed, and I tend to favor European events. I think European events are way better than some of the American events. Sorry, I've got to say that the lunches are better.
Well, in all likelihood, as we go back out into the world, I envisage it being very unlikely that me personally, I can't really see me getting to many international events purely because of my personal life. I've got a child with very severe autism, and it's very difficult for me to get away from home for long periods of time. So travel within the UK is pretty easy for me. But I've been over the pond to the States before in the past, but the thought of doing that now and being that far away from my son is not something I'm going to be ready for in the immediate future. I don't think so.
That's understandable.
But we shall see. We shall see. But I know that Microsoft are probably going to be talking about when they're opening up for in-person events that people with that mindset who don't want to or can't travel for whatever reason can still participate in the way that they have done in a hybrid way. So that's great that they're going to be able to do that now.
I think hybrid is the way. I think hybrid will be the way in the future. I think this kind of the way that we're doing this, I mean, whether you're in person, you're seeing the event on stage and also broadcasting it is great rather than a pre-canned thing. One of the things about if I can criticize now about this year's Ignite, is a lot of the sessions were pre-canned. Everything's pre-canned to make them all look good,
Yeah.
And the problem, once you start doing that, you start losing something.
You take the human element out of it, don't you?
Because
it's too polished.
You are. It's too polished, and then it becomes a commercial. And people don't want that. They want it real, So that's why I always think in-person events will always win. And you haven't been to your MVP summit yet either. Your first MVP summit.
Indeed not. No, that was all virtual for me as well.
Yeah,
so
you definitely got it. If you can go to that, definitely go to that. It's wonderful. It's
I've been
wonderful.
told that, yeah. So absolutely, we shall have to see if I can make that happen. If that comes back, which I'm sure it will.
Yeah. It's only for 5 days or 4 days or something, but it's definitely worth attending. So
Awesome. Good stuff. And, if I'm thinking more about, we're talking about the kind of community things that you're up to, and not only do you kind of contribute with your training resources to things like YouTube and things, you've contributed to 2 IT security books, which puts you in good company because Peter wrote the MS500 exam reference, the security exam reference. So I'm surrounded by IT security authors here.
That's one of my favorite courses to teach, actually.
The MS500, yeah. It's funny you should bring that up because I was just contacted by the publishers just a few days ago to say we're looking to update it because, as you said already, Andy, the outlines change frequently, and to modify the content in the online form and the digital form is pretty easy. It sucks a bit in terms of the print copies, but as an author, as somebody who wanted to write a book all my life, I selfishly quite enjoyed having the real full paper version in my hand. There you go.
Wonderful, is it? Oh, quick commitment. There you go. And there's nothing like it, is there? There's nothing like feeling that book with your name on it. It is
so true. So true. Because I would never. I'm a sort of a modern work technology sort of person. I'd never actually buy a physical book really anymore myself. I'm Kindle all the way in, but my own book, no, I want the real thing. But it's sort of like a car, though. It's sort of dead on arrival in the sense that when you drive it off the forecourt, the value is all out of it because the technology is ever moving and changing.
Doesn't matter, mate. You're a published author. Well done.
No one can ever take something like that away from you.
They can't take it away. No, they can't take it away.
How do both of you guys, how do you both find the writing process? Because from outside looking in, I mean, that's a heavy book, Peter. There's a lot of words in that. I mean, how do you sit down and plan, here's what I'm going to write, and put it all together and make sure it makes sense? Well, because my writing doesn't make sense.
Your writing does make sense, honestly. Well, what I did, I mean, I had no idea how I was going to go about it, but I got a lot of help from the publishers. I mean, Pact Publishing, who are based in the UK in Birmingham, but their editorial team are over in Mumbai in India, and a lovely bunch of people. And they gave me a ton of help and advice, how to plan the outline for your book. You start with the outline, and it's an advantage starting with something like an exam guide. I've only written exam guides so far. If I go to something else, that'll be a totally different experience, I imagine. Because with the exam guide, you've got to stick to the outline. It's all there for you, what you've got to write. It's very structured. So that made it a lot easier. And what I did was I basically looked at the docs.com content and a few other bits here and there, and I sort of copied and pasted and then rewrote and put in my own take and it, because you've got to stick. It's quite a fine art in the sense that you've got to not stray too far away because it's an exam outline and you've got to stay true to that. But you've also got to avoid plagiarism, which is very, very difficult. But the publishers help you with that as well, in the sense that they've got tools which will detect that sort of thing. They can search all around the internet, and if they have a match of something, they'll detect it. And I was lucky in that book there, the MS500, there was only one thing that came up, and it was on one of the sort of imaginary exam questions that I put in at the end in the mock exam that I did. It obviously came out of my head, but it was too similar to something else that they'd found out there on the internet, which so I had to revise that a little bit. But yeah, I absolutely love the process.
That's good.
Cool. And Andy, you've not only written, kind of IT technical books, you've also written, I believe, so you have a trilogy, and my understanding is you've got the first 2 books of that have been published, and the third one is on its way. That's called The Seventh Day. It's won like a Nepean Award, the first book in the series, and I've actually started listening to it. You've kind of done something quite interesting on YouTube there. You've started recording it as an audiobook.
I did. That was just for fun. I wasn't seriously going to. A few people have said, will you do it? And I just thought, I'll just throw a few chapters out there.
Sure.
I was actually thinking of maybe doing some more once I get back in my proper office, because this room's quite echoey for it at the moment. But yes, I'm going to do some more. But the idea was just to give you a flavor of it, and no, that was fun. It was. I'd always wanted to write a book, always, and I've always wanted to do fiction.
Yeah.
No offense against Peter, but a lot of people have asked me, Andy, can you do technical books? And I'll do chapters. I'll write chapters, and I'll contribute to technical books. Absolutely, anytime you want me to, I'll do that. But I just don't have the patience to write a full book.
Right.
But novels, on the other hand, I love writing novels. I love the creative process, and and I love learning as well. And also, I always said that in my books, I'm not going to write about a place unless I've actually been there. So when I was researching my book for Shadows Rising, quite a lot of the story takes place in the Vatican. So I wrote to them, and I got an invite. So we went out to Rome, and we went to Vatican City.
Cool.
We were met by a cardinal, and we were given a personal tour of everything. I've seen everything.
Wow.
So everything that's in that book is real. Everything and every location in my book is real, and a lot of the science is real as well. So I wanted to kind of, it's fiction, but could it happen?
Yeah. So you've told us a bit there about the setting, one of the settings in the book. Can you share with us a little bit about your protagonist and the journey and that sort of thing?
Yeah, sure. Well, the story is set in 1710, which in Scotland was the time of the Jacobite uprisings, and my character is called Dougie Allen, and I didn't want it to be about the Jacobites. I just wanted it to be about in that time period.
Right.
And I live in a place called Alva, and Alva is one of the most famous sources of silver in Europe during the 17th and 18th centuries. And so it takes place just where they're opening up the silver mine. And Dougie, he has an encounter with a strange individual who's kind of very bright blue eyes, very gaunt, dark hair, very strange looking person. And they have there's an accident in the mine, and he falls into kind of elements of Quatermass in the pit. He falls in and he discovers something that he wasn't supposed to discover. And as a consequence, he's thrown forward in time. And now it's all he's got to persuade the authorities, because of course the military's involved, the police are involved, the government wants to know who he is. He's got to persuade them that there's a huge threat to the planet, and it's a race against time thriller. So it's kind of, if somebody said to me, name your book in kind of just one phrase, it's Highlander meets the Da Vinci Code meets the Omen. That's the easiest way. That's the easiest way.
Wow.
Yeah. So Highlander meets the Da Vinci Code meets the Omen.
I have got to read these now, because you named two of my very favorite things there.
Yeah.
I'm a Highlander nut. I love Highlander, and they're gonna remake it with Henry Cavill. I just saw announced.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
I love the original Highlander. The sequels not so much. I love the TV series spin-off a lot. Really had a lot of time for that. And Da Vinci Code, Angel, absolutely love that as well. I'm not so much on horror. That's not my genre, but superb.
Well, I love he discovers this strange individual, and basically these creatures, individuals, they've determined that humanity is not good. So they've been around for billions of years. They decided that the dinosaurs, if the dinosaurs were allowed to evolve, they would evolve into be a dangerous species. So they were wiped out. And now they've decided to do the same thing with man. Right?
Oh, interesting.
So it's how a race against time. And are these beings angels? Are they demons? Are they aliens? You don't know. Yeah. So I'm halfway through the third book just now.
Amazing.
So the third book is called The Last Salvation. So
Nice.
and it's coming along very nicely.
Beautiful. Well, I'm definitely going to be checking those out now, Andy, because I did, before we talked to you today, I did take a look on Amazon yesterday, and rave reviews. I'm sure we're going to recommend to everyone, go and check it out, and we'll put links in the show notes for your books as well. I'm super inspired because, like you, I've always wanted to write a book my whole life. It's been on my bucket list. I never imagined it would be a technical book. That just sort of happened.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer in things happen for a reason, and fate and destiny and all that sort of thing. And that's sort of my in for getting my first book. But like yourself, I do have a passion to write. I don't know what it'll be, whether it'll be fiction, whether it'll be something more life story, maybe he's connected to my son and his journey. But there is a book in me somewhere. I've always said that. So
everybody's got a book in them. Everybody's got a book. And
you've super inspired me.
And the thing is, don't let anyone tell you can't do it. Never let anybody tell you can't do it, because you can.
Absolutely. And how was the process for you of getting published? Was that something that was difficult, or was it easy?
Basically, the first thing that I did, I came up with a number of titles. In fact, the book originally, The Seventh Day, was untitled. But when you look at The Seventh Day, the reason why I called it The Seventh Day is because it takes place over 7 days. But it talks about the book of Revelation. There are 7 books of Revelation. It talks about the 7 candlesticks, the 7 angels, the 7 churches. There's 7 days in the week. There are 7 continents on the planet Earth. The number 7 seems to come up an awful lot, don't you think?
It does. It does. Well, in another very famous book series, the Harry Potter, there's 7 books there as well. So seven's a very important number. You're absolutely right. So
but yeah, for me, wrote the title, synopsis, so I know what the story's going to be about. Then I'll write down, I'll bullet point the book. So I'll have like 20 bullet points.
Yeah.
So a bit like you writing your technical book, like the exam points, and then basically I'll flesh out each of these so that they become chapters. And before you know it, 2 chapters becomes 30 chapters, becomes 80 chapters, becomes a book.
And did you know the whole? I mean, when you started out, did you have a whole trilogy in mind? Did you have the end? Fantastic. So you knew the end. You knew what you wanted to get to, what your end point was, and now it's broken down into three books.
The only thing I would say that changed is I would say that the second book, I think I wrote it much better than the first book because I evolved as an author. I felt I learned so much. And also my daughter is wonderful she was an editor. She's a fantastic editor of my books. And I paid somebody a lot of money to edit my first book, and they were useless. I paid. I had a couple of editors in the second book, and interestingly, they all came up with exactly the same suggestions. But I do beta copies of my book as well. So I'll send it out to a few people, not friends. I'll never send it to friends because friends are biased.
Yeah, that's true.
And don't take it personally. I'll send it out to people that I don't know, and I'll get the feedback. So does this work? What do you think? And so on. And that's it. Yeah,
that's an interesting idea, because I've seen there's a website. It's called LeanPub, and it can serve as a way of kind of sending out. I don't know if beta versions is the right words, but insofar as you can pay and you can get the chapters as the author completes those chapters. And I know Don Jones, who's of PowerShell fame.
I know Don Jones, yes.
Yeah, so he kind of went through the same process. And first he writes fiction, and his book, The Never, which is kind of like a Peter Pan style fiction book, he published it through LeanPub in a similar kind of way. So it's cool that you can kind of take these things from the tech industry and apply them to something as ancient as the publishing industry.
Yeah, it was like Mark Russinovich with his books, Zero Code, and his fiction trilogy that he did quite well. And I know Mark very well, and he put a nice quote on the back of my book for me, which was fun.
Oh, that's awesome!
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
yeah.
so-
Mark Rusinovich is. I don't know how he's even human. You talk about high output. The CTO of Azure, and his Let's not go in there.
Yeah,
Lot of respect for Mark.
me too.
Well, actually, you know what? Speaking of not human, and potentially what Mark Rusinovich is. Let's talk about Terminator. So this is the question we put to all our guests, and this actually, this determines whether or not our guests are allowed to come back on the show, whether or not they give the right answer. So, Terminator 1 or Terminator 2?
Oh, I would say I would have to go with T2.
Hey, there you go. Another one for
Actually,
T2.
the other day I was watching T3, and
Oh.
actually it's not bad.
Is it aged better than you think?
Hey?
Has it aged better than you think?
Yes, it has actually aged pretty well. T1 never hasn't aged very well. That's looking pretty old now.
Yeah.
But T2 is still great. And that's
So good.
that's one of the great things, by the way. If you ever get to Ignite, Microsoft always hire out Universal in Orlando. Yeah, so you can just go round Universal as often as you want, and you go on every single ride, and you come off and go back on again, and it's great. And one of the things there that they have is the Terminator 2 experience, which was great. Yeah, which was great.
Nice. I didn't know there was a Terminator 2 right.
Fantastic.
Yeah, there is. It's
I need
kind
to
of an
book my tickets now.
It's kind of an interactive show. It was an interactive show.
Well, in Rue, in my opinion, you've given the correct answer. So that notwithstanding, we definitely want to invite you to come back and talk to us again at some point in the future when your next book is out. And of course, super excited to not only read your first 2 books, Andy, but then when the third one comes out, you'll have to let us know, and we'll read that too, and cannot wait. Absolutely cannot wait.
Absolutely. So I guess if we wrap things up now, I guess thanks for joining us. That was really nice to meet you and hear about everything you're up to. If folks want to find you online, websites, LinkedIn, training, things like that, where's the best place to get in touch with you?
Website andymalone.org. You can find me there. And also, I've come off Twitter. I'm not on Twitter anymore. I came off that. But I'm on LinkedIn. I've also got my YouTube channel, and you can find me in those places.
Awesome. We will put links to all of that, and then also where folks can, I guess, both listen to and buy your books as well. We'll link to that in the show notes. Definitely recommend it. I'm currently making my way through the audio version of your first book just now, which is good stuff.
Enjoy.
Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, and I'll be getting into it for sure as well. Looking forward to it. Cannot wait.
Pleasure, and good luck with your books as well. Okay.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So with that, I guess we'll sign off then from episode 10, Cloud Conversations. I've been Root. I've been Root. No, we're not Guardians.
You've been rude.
Wow, you managed to get 58 minutes through a show without blanking out. So I've been Rue, and we've been lucky enough to be joined by Andy and Pete Rising.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you again next time. Take care.
Take care.
Awesome, everyone. Cheers, everyone.